wants to unrig the system? I can't hear you. Come on. Who wants to unrig the system? All right, thank you. I'm Josh Silver. I am the founder and director of a group called Represent Us, and we're going to talk about how to do it. And we're going to roll this keynote as soon as it allows me. The presentation is about leverage, because after all, we all want to get off the treadmill. We all have different definitions of what the treadmill is, but the reality is that we're all here. Anybody who said, yes, I want to unrig the system, you said that not because you really care about campaign finance or redistricting or sort of gerrymandering and voting, same-day voter registration. You care about these issues, and they keep kind of going like this. one step forward, two steps back. Pretty much, I'm almost 50. It's been my whole adult life. And so what we're going to do is start with the problem. The problem this year is the first year that the United States was deemed by The Economist magazine as no longer a full democracy. Only 4% of Americans have a great deal of confidence in Congress. A Princeton study from 4 years ago showed that the median economic American, that is in the 50th percentile economically, has a minuscule near zero, statistically non-significant impact upon public policy. That is what you want and what Congress does. The last election had the two least popular presidential candidates of all time. Yes, there were nearly $1 billion spent to make sure that happened for Clinton, but the reality is when you put this all together, something doesn't smell right. That's a laugh line. And what doesn't smell right is that we are having a system failure in American politics. What do I mean by that? The way that candidates run, the way we vote, and the way that politicians govern is corrupt. How is running corrupt? Well, the last federal election costs over $7 billion. So did 2012, the presidential year. Politicians spending between 40 and 70% of their time raising money rather than representing you. Now consider that 0.05% of Americans are the only ones that give $10,000 or more to politics. And what's happened is politicians are effectively dependent on 0.05% of the American people. And when that happens, 99.95% of us are left out. The way we vote is corrupt. You'd never know this by watching TV or even being at the conference. But 44% of Americans are registered independents today. 44%. 28% are Republicans, 25% are Democrats. Now, actually, the Democrat number just went up 3 points in the last 6 months for kind of obvious reasons. And the independent number went down a little bit. But the reality is, and this is not an endorsement for Mike Bloomberg, yes, you have to be a billionaire to be taken seriously as a presidential contender independent, but any independent candidate or third-party candidate is immediately dismissed as a spoiler, as you're gonna mess it up for somebody, and it's because the system is broken. Meanwhile, my 6 favorite U.S. congressional districts gerrymandered such that 86% of U.S. House races are now uncompetitive, and in a situation where it forces politicians to appeal to their most extreme voters, because it's the extreme voters that turn out in primary elections. If general elections aren't competitive, primary elections are. That's the way it goes. And then this is the cycle of corruption that defines politics today, governance today. It's lobbyists who used to be legislators and their senior staff who spin out. They use their Rolodex. They get a lot of money from industry. They pay for campaigns. They get favors done for them, and the cycle of corruption continues. The way that politicians run, the way we vote, and the way politicians govern is corrupt. So the question is, if corruption is legal, can you make corruption illegal? And that's really the heart of this story I'm telling you today. We started by talking to Lawrence Lessig, Zephyr Teachout, yes, Jack Abramoff, and about 24 other experts. And we asked them a simple question: could you pass a law that would fix the problem, that would be constitutional? And the universal answer was, yeah, sure. Yours is a political problem. For virtually all of these things, you could greatly fix them, nearly completely fix them, with good enforced laws. For example, you could fix how politicians run with campaign finance reform, public funding, transparency. You could take a big bite out of super PACs in ways that I don't have time for today. Gerrymandering reform with independent redistricting commissions like they have in California. Open primaries, vote by mail, automatic voter registration, enhanced voter education, ranked choice voting, approval voting that allows independent and third-party candidates, national popular vote. You could help fix how politicians govern with actually enforcing lobbying rules that have been eviscerated for the last 40 years, having conflict of interest laws that are more similar to what you see for judges but don't exist for legislators, enforcing the law, closing the revolving door between government service and the private sector. These are all things that could be done, and here's what's interesting. If you wrap all those things I just described up and you call them the American Anti-Corruption Act, they poll at 87% support nationwide. Likely voters, 1,000 sample, balanced, Republican, Democrat, Independent. The naive amongst us would say, Congress will surely pass it, but you're talking about asking the fox to put a lock on the henhouse. And I think you all intuitively understand that this is the problem that plagues this issue. So in that environment, you have to go around Congress. And if you're going to go around Congress, your first question has to be, who's winning? And the answer, gay marriage and marijuana. I always tell people, I don't really care what you think about those issues. The reality is their strategy has been amazing, and their victories have been stunning. They went around Congress. You look at the map on the left, that was gray 12 years ago. The map on the right was gray 25 years ago. But these were efforts that were heavily architected by smart people. And our goal is to replicate their success by passing city and state anti-corruption acts all across the country at the city, county, and state level that overhaul how democracy works and are uniquely tailored to each location. You can't cookie cutter it. And to be clear, we're not reinventing the wheel. Efforts to change democracy, to fix it in the states and cities has existed for decades. What we're doing is changing the play with these three innovations. Corruption, well, I'll go through them one at a time. Money in politics, gerrymandering, election reform, campaign finance reform elicit this response in healthy humans. But when you talk about corruption, the percentage of moderate and conservative voters who actually resonate with it, say it's very important to them to fix it, goes up by 30 points. And you have to do that because let's look at how this country is comprised. We are, when asking people, as Gallup does twice a year for the last 25 years, are you liberal, moderate, or conservative? We're only a quarter liberal. But for the last 40 years, efforts to fix our rigged system have lived here. Meanwhile, this other 75% of the country, the overwhelming majority of these people support sweeping reforms. And then third, diversifying risk and opportunity. People like me, for too often, have come into a room like this and said, if we can pass sweeping ethics laws, things will be better. Or if we can fix gerrymandering, things will be better. The reality is that we need all of these reforms, or at least a bunch of them. And what we've concluded is that the policies to unrig our system need to be viewed more like a financial investment, where you increase the opportunities for victories and you sort of spread risk in the same way you would with an investment. And here's what's interesting. When you call it the American Anti-Corruption Act, I mentioned 87% support. Look at the support amongst Republicans. You got 91% of Democrats, 83% of Republicans. We saw these numbers and our pollsters said, these are incredible. You've got to go out and cross the country and you need to win this at the local level. So we tested it in Tallahassee, Florida. We put a law on the ballot, campaign finance, ethics, public funding, and we got 2/3 of the vote. That woman is the head of the Florida Tea Party Network, and the man is the head of Florida Common Cause. Next, a larger coalition of groups, ours included, went to Maine and Seattle, passed similar laws. The following year, 2016, South Dakota. Maine became the first state in the country to have statewide ranked choice voting. San Francisco, 2 other counties. We saw a repeal in South Dakota by the legislature, which was unbelievable. It's the 4th most corrupt state in the country. These are the leaders of the repeal, sort of mocking the voters. The good news is we're going back to South Dakota. Today, we filed the signatures, and we are on the ballot in South Dakota with a constitutional amendment that those guys can't touch. We've seen 60 local wins across the country, amazing volunteers across the country, 700,000 members in our little group represent us that just started 4 years ago. And not only are we doing ballot initiatives, also lobbying city councils, county commissions, state legislatures, and you start to see a vision where we and other groups are fighting for gerrymandering in the green states in 2018 at the ballot, reform, ethics and campaign finance reform in the purple states, automatic voter registration, which already has 10 states that have passed it. Great work by lots of different groups around the country in Nevada and Arizona. So there's a promising strategy where as you kind of start to look with kind of squint your eyes a little bit, By the time we get to 2022, things get really exciting. A domino effect of victories across the country. And I'll leave you with this slide. This tracks the arc of these crucial issues over the last 200 years. Interracial marriage, prohibition, women's suffrage. They all started in the states. The vertical axis is the states. The horizontal axis is the time over 200 years. And they all kept winning and winning and winning. And conventional wisdom was, you're never going to win. But they kept at it, and they fought, and they did it locally, and they won. And that's what we're doing. Thank you for watching.